Um, this live stream may or may not be for you, and this is a little heavy-handed one. So I understand, you know, this is not for you. Sometimes even, I have topics or subjects, that I talk about that may be a little bit too deep. So consider this. What's going on, Simply Deep? Kind of interesting that you're the first person here. So consider this a headline ripped directly from the New York Times, Thursday, Scorned and Trapped Wives and Children of ISIS, written by Ben Hubbard. Interesting. Yeah, so one of the taglines is in there. It says is unwanted back home. They're held in limbo at Syria camps. So let me read this article to give you some context. Bear with me. I did go to public school, but I'll read some of this and then we'll get back into the story. So, Rajo Camp, Syria. When her husband uprooted their family from Morocco to live under the Islamic State in Syria, Sarah Ibrahim had little choice but to go along. After he disappeared, she believed he was killed in an airstrike on a prison. She fled with her two sons. They were captured last year and had been held ever since this dusty, sweltering detention camp in northeastern Syria. They are among more than 2,000 foreign women and children being held in such camps, trapped in a legal and political limbo with no foreseeable way out. Their home countries do not want them back, fearing they could spread radical Islamic ideology. The Kurdish authorities that administer the stateless war zone do not want them either, and say it's not their job to indefinitely detain citizens of other countries. And it says, you told us to leave ISIS, and we left, but we still considered ISIS, said Miss Abraham, 31. Her frustrations dissolving into tears. So who is responsible for us? Who will determine our fate? This so-called caliphate is the Islamic State, which once stretched across large swaths of Syria and Iraq, then drew tens of thousands of partisans from around the world who came to fight to live in what was billed as a pure Islamic society. Among them were many women, some who were brought by their husbands or fathers. Others came alone and married, or were forced to marry after they arrived. But as the so-called caliphate collapsed, things began to change. So, um, that's just me reading part of it. I'll get into the rest of it later. I'm not even gonna lie to you. This was a hard one to talk about. I had so many other things that I could have came on here and spoke to you about, but it just wouldn't have been right. I'm surprised the man that refused to die is not in here somewhere. And what this is about, just to give you the long and short of it all, um, is it's about the wives, the children of people who were connected to the Islamic State, who were the wives and the families, I guess, the children of terrorists. And now that the caliphate, the Islamic, it's like an Islamic, don't get me to lie to you, it's like an Islamic society, a pure Islamic society that's supposed to exist, and it has certain rules and stuff like that, which I know nothing about. I'm not saying I'm an Islamic State sympathizer, no, by no means, by no stretch. What got me interested in this story is the human rights aspect of it. You know, one of the ladies in the story, in the report here in the New York Times, basically talked about, what about redemption? Do we get the chance to be redeemed? But you have to look at the government side of it. The government side of the whole matter. The home countries. They have no obligation to like reacclimate, or what's the word that they use? Reparate. They have no obligation to reparate or give reparations back to these people who are from that chose to leave and disband from their countries. What's going on, Mitchell family? Um, so it's kind of like it's crazy because you have this situation where you kind of abandon your country. You did abandon your country to go follow this ideology, this jihadist way of living. Things didn't work out. The caliphate falls apart. Things don't go as the way you seem that they should go. Now you want to go back to your home countries and you're looking for redemption. but you're trying to go back to your home countries, and your home countries are looking at you like, you know what, look, we don't want to we don't want you to spread that ideology here. So, Christian Adventures, appreciate you for coming through here. It's a touchy situation, but see, lost in all this and hurt by it are the children. That's what I worry about too. Now you have children growing up, in these, I guess basically detention camps, these stateless, war zone detention camps in foreign lands. So it comes to a situation, where, the irony of it all is that now, I guess you are, in a world of your own. You are in a different place. It's just that instead of finding heaven on earth, you found hell, and you found it in a place that you never thought you would find it. So, things go astray. And the human rights part of it is like, yeah, it's not right, to have people out there, inhuman, subterranean, conditions, or, just the substandard living, conditions. But, then it comes to the point, at what point do you not become responsible for your own actions? But then on the flip side, like one of the ladies was asking, how long, should they have to pay for the mistakes that they made? Because like some of the ladies were saying in the camps, they did make mistakes, and some countries have started to take back some of these I guess, these women and children to their countries. Not all. I think Canada and a couple of other countries are still like on the fence with it. I don't know if it's Denmark or whatever the case may be. Russia, which surprised me of all places, Russia started to take back, some of the people that were out there like that. Maybe, so you have whatever conspiracies that you want to have with that. It just goes into like, me thinking about redemption and what people go through and stuff that they particularly face, and it's like, wow, what, where should you, where do you go with that? Let me see if I could read and get into some more of this, because this is an interesting story. I don't know what some of your thoughts on it. I don't know if you folks out there in the chat think that, they should be taken back to their home countries. How do you feel about redemption? This is the story that I'm talking about right here. The ISIS, children of ISIS, wives and children of ISIS, basically, are refugees out there. So let me read some more of what it's saying. It says, under a military campaign by Kurdish militants backed by a United States military coalition, many of the men were killed or captured. The wives and children who survived ended up in camps like this one right here. Like I said, I don't expect this to be for everybody. This is just something that I'm showing you, that I'm just going out the box. I'm thinking and talking about stuff that's I guess way beyond my own comfort zone. So camps like that. And let's see what they're talking about. Um Camps like this. Unwanted by anyone. We are working responsibly, but the international community is trying to flee from us as responsibility, said Abdul Karim Amar, an official in the local administration charged with persuading governments to take their citizens back, an effort he acknowledges it has been very successful. He says this is a ball of fire that everyone is trying to get rid of, and they threw at us. The absence of any plan to deal with the detainees is part of the wider disorder in the lands liberated from the jihads. In Iraq, many women who once lived among the faces, uh, among who once lived among them face swift trials and death sentences of charges supporting the Islamic State. In Syria, they are effectively prisoners in dingy camps in an area under the control of no internationally recognized authority. They might be able to press their home countries to take them back. On a rare visit to the largest of these camps, no cursive fish. Well, I don't have to get too deep into that because, like I said, you can read the story for yourself. But this is just something that got me and caught my attention because I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how you folks feel about redemption. I don't know how you feel about people, in these particular situations. Like I said, I don't know if this is something you want to hear about. It's okay. I get it. Um, it's just a touchy situation because you find people who may have made mistakes, but then on the other end, there are people out there who still believe in the ideology, as the article talked about. I don't have to read the whole article. You can go on the New York Times.com and find out the article if you're really interested in what's being said and whatnot. But it's a dicey thing because On one end, you still have people who believe in the ideology, who believe in the caliphate, who believe in the Islamic State, who still, subscribe to that, even though things didn't go the way they want. And then you do still have, some people who particularly, you know, want to turn away from it, and they may have made a mistake, and then there's the kids in the middle who are paying for it, and then I guess there's countries that are scared of the ideology spreading, because how do you know that it won't spread? What do you say about it? How do you know that this won't become a situation? Syria was beautiful in 2020 and 11. Yes, yeah, I heard it was beautiful as well. I mean, I seen a couple of documentaries on Syria and whatnot. Yeah, freaking ISIS is kind of crazy. ISIS did cause a lot of problems. I mean, it's kind of sad what happened. Unfortunately, there's a lot of innocent people that were caught up in that situation, but there's still a lot of people being judged. There's still a lot of people in limbo. How am I? I'm decent. I'm decent. Egyptian gamer geek. I'm just talking about something that maybe a little bit too intense for folks, and I'm surprised. I didn't see Patch anywhere. The man refused to die. There's even Kim Jong Un. Yeah. Well, it is what it is. It is what it is. Egyptian gamer geek. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world, but what I try to do while I'm talking about this, why this is something that's even relevant. Not all Muslims are bad, though. Yeah, I agree. I agree, Egyptian Gamer Geek. But here's the problem that you have with that. When you're somebody who's of a faith and you basically participate, in something that's so negative and violent, how do you come back? How do you walk that back and say, now I want redemption, and now, I don't want to be a part of that. So it becomes hard not to be judged. It becomes hard not to, have people constantly looking over their shoulder at you. It becomes hard for you not to become somebody who's constantly detained, or somebody who's unwanted, somebody who can possibly spread an ideology. And like they were saying in the article, it's not even clear, like with some of these wives, even some of the children who are teenagers, how much involvement they had in the beheadings and the killings and stuff like that of, particular people. So it's hard to determine, because you still have people out there who believe in that. It's just that they were part of a failed effort. So you're part of the losing side. It's not so much now that you've given it up. It's just that you can't win. So you balance that. It's a touchy thing. It's a lot of shades of gray in the midst of this. When I'm reading this article, it just left me with more questions than answers. This is one of those things where I don't have answers to, but there's definitely blood spilled on all sides. There's definitely guilty parties, you know, all the way around, be it from the international community that may decide, hey, I don't want to deal with that, even though these people are from our home countries. And then there's, like I said, the Islamic community that may not want to address it and deal with it in a broader way, just to say, oh, those are separate from us. And then there's the human rights, part of it, how they feel about it. And, there's the, like I said, the United Nations is, they probably didn't read the Quran properly. I don't know, Egyptian Gamer Geek. I really don't know. All I know is a situation that once you put yourself in that situation where you're part of a Islamic extremist group, how do you take it down and walk yourself back and say, now I'm not a part of that. I want redemption. And that's a hard sell. That's a hard sell. And then unfortunately there's the kids that are part of that. It's like, I feel bad for the kids, if anything, because you got babies, you got toddlers, you got kids out there that don't know nothing. I don't know if it's true, but the Quran tells us to kill non-Muslims. I don't know if it's true either. Egyptian Gamer Geek. There's a lot of things I don't know about the Quran. There's a lot of things I don't know about the Muslim religion. All I know is that, you know, it's a situation where it's not looking good. And there's a lot of people out there who are displaced, who may have been a part of, or support of the Islamic State, of the Caliphate. I'm even taking a risk by even saying this online, like I said, because I ain't a part of no terroristic group or nothing like that. But, stuff like this pops up on, whatever watch list or search list or whatever the case may be. But talk about this stuff because the human rights aspect of it. So if there's any government agency watching, if there's any conservative group or anybody that's offended or feels some type of way, this is just something that I read, on the train, and something that really touched me, something that really got to me, about just thinking about redemption. How does that come? Is that something that's even possible in this situation? I don't know. And there's a lot of people out there that feel like, you know what, hey, they killed my family member, they killed my friend, they killed my countrymen, let them burn, you know, let God sort them out. What the hell with them, let them go up them and their kids, and that's how people may feel about it. And there's some people on the end who may, you know, um, how it goes. It's a deep conversation tonight, Justin. It's a deep conversation. This one may not be for you. I don't know about it, sir. I don't know. I don't know if this live stream is for a lot of folks. So I do understand. I do appreciate it. If you want to be a part of it, I mean, I'm not mad at you if you want to be a part of the conversation or you don't. This, like I said, I give the disclaimer a lot of times. This live stream may or may not be for you. So that's one of those things that I'll definitely say to you on this one. So I just try to, I don't know, I just try to understand life. I just try to understand humanity, in many different aspects. That's why I was reading this story. That's why I even took the time out to read it and go through it. I'm always down to listen and learn. Well, in this one, Justin, I'm talking about the children and wives of I guess ISIS, former ISIS jihadists or whatever that are, stuck in, I guess detainee camps, like refugee camps, for lack of a better phrase or term. They're unwanted. What does it say? They're unwanted in their home countries. They can't go back. And a lot of them are saying that they have changed. But how do you know a person has really changed when they're part of something that's so violent, so extreme? How do you know a person is really different? It takes time, and it's a situation where you may never know. You really may never know. And you know, I understand a lot of the home countries that these people may come from. People come from Denmark, Germany, Tanzania, France. Some from the United States. So I understand the countries, the home countries that a lot of these people may have come from. How they may say we don't want these people in our country because they may spread a negative, harmful ideology throughout the society. These people, they figure these people are so dangerous, and some of them are so dangerous that they don't even want them in the prisons. You got some people who come from places like Russia or what do you call it, Tanzania. I'm not to say it's the most dangerous, but even certain parts of the United States, they don't want them there. So they're saying just imagine you take these people, be it wives or teenagers or whatever, and then you send them back to their home countries and it starts to spread and become infectious. They're worried about the spread of ISIS and the ideology coming into, the society of these different countries. They're looking to be liberated. Nobody really wants to touch it, but it does become a human rights issue, as to, what point and how much, does it come to a point where you say, okay, they've repaid their debt to society. This is a little bit different than an ex-con or somebody who was just, committed a violent crime in their country or whatever, who just, I guess went to jail for just, regular murder or, went to jail for, I don't know, I guess whatever violent offense, that they may, that could be seen as an isolated incident. Folks still get ostracized and whatnot, but it's not like they left their country to go commit these crimes. That's why if you're playing, I guess, devil's advocate or, I don't know, the good guy, bad guy, whatever the case may be, it gets complicated. This is a really complex issue, but it's important to talk about because it hits at the core of humanity. It hits at the core of who we are, as people to understand, do we really believe in forgiveness? Do we really believe in redemption? And then how much do you forgive? How much redemption do you allow? How much, how much do you take a chance in these situations like that? And a lot of people are saying that they want no risk. That's why a situation like this is very interesting because what if it was your family member? What if it was your wife? What if it was your cousin? What if it was your relative that went over there, to join the, Islamic State or the Caliphate or become a jihadist? What would you have done? How would you have reacted to that and dealt with that? Like I said, I know this is a dangerous subject for me to even tackle and to try to get into. This is a heavy-handed one, so I understand if folks don't want to hear this or listen to this, but I definitely get into many different things because as a black man, I mean, I could just talk about things that have happened racially inside the country. I could talk about, the kid in South Carolina that got slapped up at the pool by, a Caucasian woman, and I could go into that story, which is something I wanted to talk about. But I said, as I'm reading the New York Times, I said, it's a much deeper story. It's much more impactful. It's much more to talk about. Because I mean, I'm black. That ain't gonna stop issues of I guess racial inequality and injustice and all that stuff. That's gonna be there. So unfortunately, so I will have time and many other stories to talk about. May even come back to that story. But this story right here, it made me think about the human condition. That's why I think the New York Times chose this story to put out there because it's a monster. I'm sorry. I don't care if you want to hear this live stream or not. This one is a monster of a story. It is a monster of a story when you think about the women and the children of, I guess, the side that was doing the most violent and heinous things, I mean, chopping heads off. Do you feel sorry for those folks? Do you take the time out to look at them as human beings? Is it something that you should say, hey, this is, let me deepen, let me tap into my Christian side or my Muslim side or religious side, whatever decency you have in your heart, or do you turn a blind eye to it and say, hey, screw them, they killed up my people, so let them suffer, let them die, let God sort them out, let them rot, it's karma coming back around, and there's some people that feel that way, so it's a touchy subject, and like I said, I understand, I understand if there are folks that don't want to talk about this, I understand if there are folks who this is not for them, but this is just something that was on my mind. This is something that I wanted to talk about. This is something that really caught my attention because this is a story I could not stop reading. I could not turn away from it. It makes me interested to think, to know what's happening and going on with those people out there. Um, not to say that I'm overly sympathetic to the situation. I'm not gonna sit here and say, I'm 100% sorry and whatnot. I feel bad for the kids. I feel bad for the kids that have nothing to do with this. For the kids that were born into a situation basically in the middle of a war zone. To people who went out there and were willing to die and kill for whatever ideology, twisted backwards ideology that they were going after and whatnot. There's a lot to take in as well, like what ideology does the family hold as individuals, or one as it are they who are extremists. Well, it's both sides, Justin. It's both sides because there's some people who are saying now that they no longer subscribe to that ideology. So they're saying, and I don't know how you prove that you're not, but they're saying they're not because after things fell apart, they went out there for heaven, they found hell. And then there's still people who are just straight up saying that they still support the ideology, the caliphate, the Islamic extremist, group, you know, um, ISIS. And I mean, I don't like to say Islamic extremist group, but the jihadist group, you know. So forgive me for that. I'm not trying to say Islamic extremists, but that's how some people view them or whatever, the extremist group, So it gets touchy. It really gets touchy because there are people out there that are probably definitely innocent in this situation who are out there under no control of their own. I'm talking about for the kids specifically. And then there are people who went out there willfully, who willfully went out there and did this thing. So as people on the outside looking in, somebody observing this whole situation, you say to yourself, for the ones that voluntarily went there, it is a hard time believing that all of a sudden now, once things fell apart, now all of a sudden you want to, you know, uh, redemption. You want to get yourself together. How do I know that's not just a ploy? How do I know that's something that's not, you're saying just to get out of a hellhole, like this hell on earth that's in Syria. Basically you're in a detention camp that's not being run officially by any recognizable international group. So literally, you're just at the whims of whatever local state government that's there, whatever providence, whatever organization that may come in and try to give you aid and whatnot and help. Because it's a really touchy situation. Think about it. What country wants to take on former the wives and children of former jihadists? Who wants to do that? I mean, you got to have the biggest balls. Excuse my language. You got to have the biggest balls to say, we're just going to take them all on and let it be. Because now you risk having an ideology spread with, throughout your society that you really didn't intend for, And unfortunately caught up in the mix are children or even some of the wives who really didn't subscribe to this. But then, even with the wives, how do you believe and how do you really know in their hearts that they've changed? I mean, only in time you can tell. Sometimes you make these choices, and these choices that you make, even if it would have seemed like it was cool for the moment, become something that you regret for the rest of your life. Because regardless of what side those women and children stand on, who are the former, the wives, the families of the former jihadists, I bet you this, some of them definitely regret going out there, trying to, live for whatever this cause was about. Like I said, I don't pretend to know a whole bunch about it. I'm not saying I'm a sympathizer in no way, no stretch, no form. But I think the human interest part of it, the side of it where, what happens to the people who really do want to change, what happens to the people who really are looking for redemption, what chance are they given, what solace comes, does any forgiveness come, does any understanding? It really does. Yeah, it's a moral choice over taking no risk or taking the risk. I bet the weather they would change, and the detention camp stuff sounds World War II-ish. Yeah, it's a crazy thing about it still exists. Well, yeah, it still exists. It still exists, Justin. But it's wrong on all sides. It's wrong on all sides. But it's like you try to look at which one is the lesser of all the evils. Which one is the more palatable. You know what I'm saying? The fact that they're there in the training detainee camps. These basically refugee camps. Or do you look at the side that basically these people were the supporters of jihadist terrorists. People that basically were trying to kill people who weren't, with them. If you weren't with them, you were against them. And they took you out with extreme prejudice. So, when you gather all that in and you're taking all this stuff in and you're thinking about this, it's like, wow, how much sympathy do people have? Do people have the right to be angry? Do people have the right to say, you know what, maybe I'm not a part of this. Maybe this is just something that they're going to have to deal with on their own. Some people may be looking at it saying, you know what, that's karma. This is karma coming back to them. And in that karma, comes, these harsh realities that they live, because the harsh realities of it is that, they are facing, this hell on earth that they may have been a part of, or if help inflict on other people, on innocent people. A lot of innocent people died, were caught up in this nonsense, this negativity, and it's really dicey. It's really dicey because, it really highlights the worst of us as humanity, and then there's the other side of it is it really tests your ability to forgive, and there's a lot of people who maybe in time they will forgive, maybe in time they will see it differently, maybe in time they will be able to walk it back and say, you know what, maybe it was wrong what happened to those kids, or maybe there's some of them that maybe redeemed themselves, or whatever the case may be. But the reality is, in this moment, everything is still too fresh. Everything is still too raw. It's still too much for a lot of folks to actually to even try to visit this thing. A lot of damage, a lot of harm, a lot of good people were taken out. And some would argue on both sides, but it's a rough thing. It's a rough thing because it does really go to a point of our humanity. Where do we stand? I mean, what is the right thing to do? What is the humane thing to do? I don't have the answer to that. I really don't. I wish I had the answer. I wish I could say, this is what you do, or that's what you don't do, or this is how it should happen. I wish I honestly had an answer to this. I mean, who knows? Maybe I write a book or something about that. I mean, how do you walk this back? You say, what do you do? Do you detain them? I mean, indefinitely? Do you just let them die and rot? Do you just try to, I guess, re-educate them? I don't know. What do you do? I mean, in some of their home countries, they're just being executed. You have the ones that are from Syria just being executed. They're just going swift trials, and the only ones that have some kind of hope, in this situation are the ones who are foreigners, the ones that may be from the Denmarks, the Germanys, the Russias, the United States, or whatever. They have a chance, And there's, like some of the women from Western countries, they're trying to do negotiations and stuff like that to try to get some of these folks back. depending on who they are and where they're from and who they're connected to and whatnot. And that still, add something to it as well. How do you know one has really changed? Is one really remorseful? Is one really sorrowful about their situations and what they've done? And I mean, and believe me, the awesome thing would be able to say, hey, let's just forgive and forget and just let it be, and that's just that. But it's not always easy. It's not always that cut and dry because of people's emotions, because of the damage that was done. Some things, are like a bell. Once a bell is rung, you can't unring it. Once you've seen, your loved one taken, in this heinous way, in a violent way, you can't just unsee what happened. You can't just pretend like, these things didn't go down the way that they went down, and that's just really one of those things that, really it really does get you at times, like thinking about that whole situation. It's just, what do you do? I don't know what you folks would do. I don't know if people feel comfortable even answering that situation. I don't know how you feel about it or what you think about it. Maybe you probably feel like, why waste my time talking about this? Maybe you feel like, hey, let them burn. Maybe you feel like this is just the way it is. It's really a tough thing, you know, and that's how we learn as well too. And you really can't unsee something so terrible as that. Yeah, and I think that's true, Justin. I mean, it comes to a point where, when you have these things happen and you see the casualties of war, the casualties of these atrocities come in many different ways. And like I said, I feel bad for the children. I feel bad for the innocent children that are caught up, that are, I guess the toddlers or the siblings of these folks out there. There's a lot of, children out there that may go to the wayside. They say, like they said in the article, or the report, they were talking about how there's a lot of children who have health issues. There's a lot of children out there who haven't been to school in years. Some children never been to school at all. So just imagine, you being born, you're going from being born to basically, growing up and not having real structure or anything like that, and real education or whatever the case, and then developing health issues, and then you could die in a refugee camp, because of something that had nothing to do with you, but you were just born into the wrong family, or you just came about at the wrong time. And I think that's the part that sucks, as to the innocent children that are born into these situations. Like I said, in no way do I sympathize with ISIS. No way do I sympathize with Islamic State, nothing like that. But you try to see it from a standpoint of, the humanity aspect of it all. As human beings, what about redemption? Yeah, there's such a thing, but the reality, this situation does test us all. It does. I don't care who you are. I don't care how moral you think you are. I don't care how spiritual you think you are. I don't care what background you come from. I don't care what how much money you have. How much charitable giving you've given. I don't care what you think you are. I don't care how much you pray. I don't care what it is. This will test you, especially if somebody from your country, from your family, from your unit, from your military, from your business, you know, whoever it is, if they were taken as a result of this, this is a test. Not only a test, but is a test. It's a test of your resolve. It's a test of your ability of your willingness to forgive. Can you forgive? And the reality is, it takes time to forgive. And the honesty of it, some people will never forgive. Some people will say they deserve what they get. Some countries, some providences, some militaries say, hey, this is just what it is, because the questions that they have is, how do you really know? How do you really know that they've really changed and reformed? Because sometimes when people are in rough situations, they'll say anything, they'll do anything, you know, they'll agree to anything to get out of that situations. And I imagine in this situation, for those folks that are in these refugee camps in Syria, they'll do the same. I don't know. I feel it's up to Islam to decide their fate. It seems to be on a track that's been long professed. Well, I mean, I don't know, Justin. I don't know. It's definitely one of those things where it's not just a black and white answer. It's not just a cut and dry thing. A bit biblical in a sense. Yeah, it's, definitely a bit biblical in a sense. Just as far as the forgiveness aspect of it, and many other things. Just you know, to add to it, I guess the love that people have in their heart, it's hard. It's easy for us to love folks that, we support, we care about, but how do you love that stranger? Or how do you love that person has wronged you? As is written in the Bible, it says, "Bless those that curse you, and pray for those that despitefully use you." You know, but in some situations, people don't want to hear all that. Think about it. If your family member was taken as a result of this action, or the things that were done, and you see somebody else's family, how forgiving will you be? How much understanding will you express? What will you explore in the midst of this situation? That's why it's a hard one, because while you should be willing to forgive, while we should show decency, while we should, be there and have love, understand that the children had nothing to do with it, and maybe the wives were just, coerced into the situation. The reality is not everybody was, and that's what makes it hard. The reality is that, there were people over there that went voluntarily and had families and chose to build something. Uh, that's true the thing too, man. It's such a long conversation to have for only 200 words. Yeah, no, definitely. No, definitely is it's a long conversation to have. You know, it's deep. It's really deep. And I know there's people that have strong opinions, on both sides. I think if anything in this situation, the ones that probably have the least leverage and the least, people want to hear from the least are the people that are actually in the camps, the people that have actually lost maybe, husbands or, not boyfriends, husbands, fathers, or whatever the case. There's a lot of people who are not really sympathetic to the situation. There's a lot of people who really don't care. There's a lot of people out there who say, you know what, leave them out there, let them rot, let them die. Now, for me personally, I'm torn because, like I said, you have the children, and then you do have those people who, are genuinely sorry and whatnot. What's going on, Ken of the Kentucky fam? This is a deep, deep, deep conversation. So I understand if this is not a conversation that you want to have. I understand this is if this is too much. I get it. A couple of folks have left already. They dipped in for a little bit. They heard what I was talking about. They came in and they said, "Oh, turn off the light. I don't want none of that." And I'm still here. There's so much writing behind it as well as the size doesn't matter as well. Yes, exactly. Let us see ourselves as world people. Yeah, this is true, Justin. As world people, there's a lot of people on the outside looking in. There are people who are sympathetic towards the situation, but then you look at it as a person on who's an outsider, an observer. You say, okay, if I jump into support, now I can be accused of being an Islamic State supporter. Now I could be accused of, propagandist or just allowing, enabling something to happen. And in a sense, that can be true if you're naive about this situation and you just say, hey, let any and everybody in after being a part of that, then that's a situation where it gets really dicey, because how do you prevent the spread or, the springing up of another, ISIS or another, jihadist group or whatever the case may be? It's really hard to tell. And there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear at the countries that these folks come from. I think it's more than 40 different countries that these folks have come from. So, yeah, there's some fear there. There's some things that's going on there. And I understand why some people may not want to talk about this, but this is me going into the deep water. People say I have deep conversations and stuff like that. Well, I am in the deep water right now. So, that's just what it is. I got one person left here in the chat. I understand. I definitely understand, but this is just something I wanted to talk about. This is something I definitely wanted to do a deep dive in. Thank you for the one person that came back in. I got two people in the chat. This is a deep conversation. So like I said, I don't expect any and everybody to be in here. Justin, thank you for being here. I didn't expect you to be here for the whole conversation or whatever the case may be. But like I said, this is for folks that's coming in. For anybody that's gonna watch this in the replay gang. This is just me talking about a really sensitive situation. You know, kind of sort of redemption. This is a redemption story. About how is it possible? For somebody who comes from such a negative background, such a violent and I don't know, nasty or evil situation? Is it possible for them to get redemption? And I think that's at the heart of the article here, which is one of the ladies asks, what about redemption? how much time do they have to pay for the things that they, may have voluntarily supported, So it's a real question, how long do they pay? How much should they pay? Who should pay in this situation? Should it be a situation where, the children are free to go, and the wives, are left to rot? I mean, what do you say in that situation? Is it a situation where you let some people into the country and then they spread an ideology, or they form a new group, and then it's just another situation that you're dealing with? It's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear moving around in this particular situation, and I think it's never good to move in fear. That much I can say. It's not much to move in fear. You should move in love, but the reality is that you don't want to be naive about the situation either. Because if there's people out there from more than 40 countries who went to Syria and participated in this thing and had this war and went for this jihad and put all that stuff out there, how do you just overlook that and ignore that? And I think it takes time. I think it takes time to really grasp and grapple with the decisions, the things that's going on, out there, in Syria, the things that are going on out there in the Middle East as it pertains to, the extremists and stuff like that. I know people don't want to talk about this. Psychologists could help as well determine who's for real about turning over a new leaf. Yes, they could. Yes, they could. They could. Psychologists could help determine, but there's some people that are so good that psychologists, all they would do is just be, fodder, background banter. Just, there's people that are trained. There are people that are trained to overcome this and even fool the best of the best. So it's a situation where you really don't know, and I think that's the thing that scares a lot of these countries, is that you really don't know. You really don't know what would happen that if you let these people back in to the country who have effectively turned their back on the country. True spy stuff, yeah, it's true spy stuff, but real Jedi mind tricks and stuff like that, Justin. So it comes to a point where there's a lot of fear going on. There's a lot of folks who are saying, why should I even entertain that? Why should I even go there? With that particular situation, why should I care? And it's rough. It's rough because, at the end of the day, there is the human rights part of it. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that's saying that they are for the betterment of humanity. There are people out there that's saying that they do have love in their heart, they do forgive. But then when it comes to this situation, it really gets dicey. It'll test you. This would test me because if one of my family members or countrymen are taken out, and they have been, not family members, but countrymen, you know, do you just say, hey, it's all right, it's okay? I mean, it's not, regardless of how it started, regardless of what the reasoning behind it. It is something that takes you back, and you just really examine, the situation, and it really causes you to look at yourself as a human being, or it won't. Or maybe you may come to the decision that, hey, you know what? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But it's like as Gandhi said, an eye for an eye only makes the whole world blind. Justin says, are the families considered war criminals? That's a good question as well. No, they're not. And the article was talking about the families that are there are not ones that are considered war criminals. Now, some of the families have ties as to people that were out there. Some of the families, it's not really known the involvement that a lot of the families have had, with the acts that were created. I mean, the acts that were caused, the heinous acts, the violence, the beheadings, and stuff like that. So that's another factor. Fear is a factor. Fear is a factor in this because you're saying, okay, so wait a minute, that's a huge factor though. Yeah, it is. It is a huge factor, Justin. But that's part of what happens. So some of the families are not being charged because they don't really know their involvement in what went on. So the biggest fact, one of the biggest factors is fear in this situation because you're afraid that you may let the wrong person in, and you keep the wrong person out. So it's a combination of that thing. It's saying, as opposed to saying, it's almost like a quarantine. You're saying, look, we can't figure out how to cure this one or that one or get this one or that one to work out. So all of you have to be out there. All of you have to suffer. And it's an unfortunate situation for people out there who may be innocent, especially the children, who don't have anything to do with anything other than being born into the wrong family, the wrong situation. So, yeah, Justin, it's a situation where you have some of the families out there who are not being tried as war criminals. A lot of them, I don't think any of them are being tried as war criminals, but they don't really know their involvement in the negativity and the beheadings and the fighting and the shootings and the killings. So they're kind of just like in limbo. They're in like a political legal limbo out there. So they're just holding them indefinitely. So they're waiting for them to be tried. Like some of them want to get out of the camp in Syria so bad that they're saying that they're willing to go back to their home countries and be tried, even if it means death. You know, and that's an interesting part too to me to think about. There's some people out there that's willing to be tried even to the point of death. What's going on, Crimson Fantasy? Thank you for coming through. Yeah, Justin, is true. Crimson Fantasy, this is a little bit deeper conversation. This may not be for you. So I understand if you got to jet out. I mean, a lot of people have came in and they came out. They jumped in for a minute or two and they dipped out. So I understand if this conversation is not for you, Crimson Fantasy. I'm basically talking about the unwanted children and wives of the the jihadists, the ISIS refugees, G's, if you want to call them that. Do they deserve redemption? As is talked about in the article, the New York Times article that I read. He had just talking about some of the things. Unfortunately, there are children involved. You know, yeah, yeah. Interesting question, Justin. Interesting question. Interesting question. I'll let him answer that one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. No, it's a good convo, but it's not a convo everybody's willing to have. It's a controversial conversation because not a lot of people really want to talk about it and whatnot. Yeah. I'm not touching that one, Crimson Fantasy. I'm not touching that one. That's a private conversation that you and him have to have. We'll leave it at that. Yeah, that's what's up. That's what's up. Good, good, good for that. Shout out to Granny Master. Ooh, oh, that was celebrity for the situation. But yeah, back to the conversation. So Crimson Fantasy. This is just about the whole thing. Yeah, yeah, she's awesome. She's awesome. Um, back to the conversation. This is about like I said, Justin was here, which I appreciate you for being here, Justin. You was here through almost the whole darn thing. Like I said, this is just talking about whether or not folks can find redemption, especially if they're the children of I guess I don't know negative situations. I don't want to start bringing up uh, Nazi Germany and stuff like that. I'm not trying to get banned or anything, but you have people who are children of things going on at that time. It's like do they deserve to be judged? Do they deserve to be I guess unfairly mistreated or whatever the case because of what their parents may have done? And it's a rough situation. There's some people out there who don't want to forgive. There's some people out here who don't even want to consider forgiving. There's some people out there who probably would strap up and, just run out there to Syria and get their kill on. And that's the reality of the situation. That's the reality of what happens at the end of the day. People are people, no matter the situation. We bleed the same blood. Well, Crimson Fantasy, that sounds nice. That sounds great and sweet. But you go and you talk to the people that have lost friends and families and other folks out there in Syria, because of ISIS. And I bet you'll hear a totally different answer. They'll make them bleed some blood, all right. Yeah, there'll be some blood. There'll definitely be some blood. But like that movie, there will be blood. But I don't know, was it Viggo Mortensen or something like that? And yeah, there will be blood. But we try to appeal to our better angels. We try to look at situations and say, is it possible to forgive? Yeah, you take back things like that. You're right. Um, it's hard. It's hard. I mean, it's a challenge to forgive, and that's why it's sad though too, because on one end you do have things that were done. On the other end, you do have people that had nothing to do with these things. So on both sides. All righty, man. I gotta get the phone. Yeah, no problem, no problem. Justin, thank you for being here. I'm trying to stay on an hour. I'm trying to stay on just an hour, so I'll be on Um, Thank you, Justin. I appreciate you here for being here for the conversation. Definitely appreciate it. I mean, this is a deep conversation. This is not something for the faint of heart. Nah, thank you, Justin. Thank you for being here. I didn't even expect to have three people in here this long. Like I said, this is a interesting conversation. I'm gonna be on here about 10 more minutes. A little bit over 10 more minutes, and then I'm gonna keep it moving, skedaddle and whatnot. I guess these are my closing thoughts on the situation. I know a lot of people may not have wanted to talk about this. This may not have been your cup of tea, in this conversation, but it's important because, it does go to the heart or the core of who we are as human beings. I want to learn about this. I don't know a lot about it. Well, this is the article. This is the article. Let me see. This is the article I'll show you from the New York Times, Crimson Fantasy. If you can see it, I don't know if it's backwards or whatever the case. But it's talking about unwanted ISIS children from July 5th, 2018. So let me see. Um, Let me read some of it to you. I guess I'll read some of it to you, Crimson Fantasy, since you haven't heard, since you said you want to learn more about this. Excuse me. Discombobulated. There we go. All right, I'll read some of this to you. I'll let you know about what's going on for those folks that's coming through. Yeah. Okay. It says scorned and trapped wives and children of ISIS. Roja Camp, Syria. When her husband uprooted their family from Morocco to live under the Islamic State in Syria, Sarah Ibrahim had little choice but to go along. After he disappeared, she believes he was killed in an airstrike on a prison. She fled with her two sons. They were captured last year and have been held ever since in this dusty, sweltering detention camp in northeastern Syria. They are among more than 2,000 foreign women and children being held in such camps, trapped in illegal and political limbo with no foreseeable way out. Their home countries do not want them back, fearing they could spread radical Islamic ideology. The Kurdish authorities that administer the stateless war zone do not want them either and say it's not their job to indefinitely detain citizens of other countries. So that's part of what this is. This is about this story right here. This is something that's going on in Syria right now. It's a big deal. It's really a big deal. It's a story not really talked about because at the same time, while it's a big deal, it's a political fireball. It's a human rights nightmare. So it's a real deep issue. That people kind of sweep away because of the atrocities that were committed by ISIS, the Islamic State. You know, I mean, shoot, I might get a strike on from YouTube from this. Yeah, it's not a black or white issue. It's not a black or white issue. This is definitely a shade of gray. This is definitely in the muddy waters. This is in the deep water. This is down there with Jaws or the megalodon, some down there. This is not. You're not coming up for air on this one, no time soon. You know, and you got to be careful which way you cut with that. Biggest for bringing awareness. Well, no, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's just you talk about it because what I do on my live streams, I try to talk about real issues, and I don't want to just talk about issues, just from perspective, just only black issues. I don't just talk about all black stuff, which I am black, do my thing. I love my black people, but I talk about issues that's going on with things around the world. I'm concerned about all people, be it you from Canada or Australia, Africa, Asia, wherever, of course Africa. But, like I said, there's things going on all around the world, and I think people should be more informed. People should be more aware, you know, keep yourself looking, for sure, so it's a situation that appealed to me because it's a human interest story. It's a big story. Lovely Kid Japan, thank you for coming through. I appreciate you. This live stream may or may not be for you. I'm only gonna be on here for about another 5 minutes or so. But I was talking about some heavy stuff. And I understand a lot of folks that couldn't handle this, or a lot of folks that didn't want to talk about this because, yeah, it was that part. It was deep. It was deep. This is about redemption. It's about can people be redeemed, especially if they're part of something such as dangerous or evil as treacherous as ISIS and whatnot. The children of of ISIS. I'm more concerned about the children. The wives, I don't know too much. Like I said, some of them went there voluntarily. I ain't gonna cry too many tears, about that. I'm always deep in love. Um, you're always deep in love. I don't, I don't know what you're deep in love about, but it's all good. I mean, this is a deep conversation, though. But and I talked about a lot of sensitive things in here. But yeah, peace definitely. I don't know. I don't know. It's just something that really caught my attention. I could not stop reading the story. I could not stop thinking about it. Well, not gonna lie, I say I could not stop thinking about it. I mean, it was on my mind most of the day when I was thinking about different things that I would talk about because I was thinking to myself. I said I'm gonna do a live stream now at this time, but I was gonna talk about something else, and I said it wouldn't do justice if I didn't talk about this. What story? Will you cry? I don't think you will cry. I don't think you will cry, Tina. It's this story. There's this story right here. Scorned and trapped. Wives. Was it wives and children of ISIS? They're scorned and trapped, caught in political limbo because their associations. With their husbands. People that have fought. In the jihadist group. So um, yeah, it's really a question. I mean, like when I read this, it was just more questions than answers. And it is Lonely Prepper Homestead. Thank you for coming through, Lonely Prepper. This is a sensitive sensitive subject, sir. Sensitive subject. Really just one of those things where I was like, I don't know what to make of it. I don't know. Maybe you have some opinions on it, Lonely Prepper. How do you feel about the wives and children of the ISIS families? How should they be? How do you feel they should be treated? Should they be given redemption? Should they be given a second chance? Can you trust them? What do you do with them? How do you feel about that as well, Tina? How do you feel about that Crimson Fantasy? So it's one of those situations where, I wonder. I definitely wonder about that. I mean, I say, maybe there's some of them, that definitely deserve that. You can say trust your heart, but there's a lot of countries out there that may not trust their heart. They need concrete things. They need stuff that they could really hold on to, they could grasp to and say, hey, you know what? I believe this or I believe that. It's about this or it's about that. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. It's just, it's not one of those things down the middle. You could say, okay, these are the good people. These are the bad people. These are the people that always, be on our side and whatnot. You can trust your heart with that, but you better really be careful of your heart. Um, it's crazy. Um, yeah, I got that message. I definitely got that message. You know who I'm talking about. So that's just what that is. Unfortunately, most will follow the same beliefs of the men. So, yeah, hmm, I'm glad I live in Japan. It's peaceful here. So much about the conversation. Um, yeah, yeah. It's good to be peaceful out there in Japan. I guess you don't have to deal with a lot of that stuff, but a lot of crazy stuff that's going on. Yeah, lonely prepper. But I think there's a lot of people that probably follow along with what you're saying. But as for the wives, I could understand that, what you say about that. But what about the children? Do the children deserve a second chance? Do the children deserve redemption? And then the issue comes with the children. If you separate the children from the wives and they find out why their fathers died and why they're not with their mothers and then they're orphans in a foreign land or even their own land, how do you not risk the children coming up now hating their own country of origin because they were separated because of choices that their parents made? So it gets really dicey. It gets really dicey. It's really a political hot potato. But yeah, kids get bullied here also sometimes. Oh my God. No taking kids from mamas. Yeah, yeah. But here's the thing, Tina. You don't take the kids from the mamas, but now you leave them out there into the Syrian detainee camps and whatnot. You leave them out there with health issues and, lack of education and poor substandard living conditions. And, now that's just their reality, you know. Uh, so it's kind of crazy. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It's a rough situation. Yeah, it's crazy. It's definitely crazy, Tina. I mean, but it's something that goes to the core of who we are as human beings, you know. I mean, we say we're about a lot of different things, you know, and sometimes it's hard. It's hard to be about forgiveness. It's hard to be about redemption because,
Mm-hmm.
you know, folks are scared, you know. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It's really one of those things where I look towards it and I just try to I don't know, I just try to trust my heart, dig deep within my soul to say, you know, what is the right answer? How do you go about it? Just, you know, what do you do? If I was in that situation, I'm thinking to myself, if I was a world leader and I had people from my country go and participate in this thing, I really don't know. The kids are indoctrinated very young, just growing up like in a racist community. It's a crapshoot. Yes, I agree with you on that one. I don't know what's happening with the world. I give you that much, lovely kid Japan. I definitely give you that. I agree with you and Lonely State Prepper. It is a crapshoot. You have to be willing to take a serious gamble, you know, a serious leap of faith in that situation and assuming that maybe this family or maybe this person or maybe this kid, maybe these people will be redeemed or maybe they will, you know, come into their own and say, hey, you know what, this is just what I want to do. I want to be an upstanding citizen. I'm not like my parents and stuff like that. But you brought up a great point, lonely prepper, which I forgot to think about. I saw an actual documentary to where they teach these kids from very young. They teach them how to kill. They teach them how to use weapons. You know, they teach them the ideology. There's some children that are 3, 4 years old that fight better than certain soldiers out there. You know, that are trained killers, that are hardened killers. You know, and you like at 3 and 4, yep. By the time they're 15, they're already, you know, expert marksmen. So, you know, it goes into that. You know, why Japan having a problem? No guns here. Well, that's one. That could be one reason. That could be one reason, Tina. But you know, it's not like that everywhere. Some people have problems. You know, all over. Like here in the United States, we probably got too many guns. Even in states like New York, we got too many guns. There's a crackdown on it. But like I said, you go to the wrong neighborhood out here, you can still get shot. You know, so that's it's just that whole situation, how that transpires and goes and whatnot. You know, I'm not gonna keep you folks on here too long. I've reached the hour mark. I've said my piece. I thank you all for being here. I appreciate folks for coming in and out. I appreciate folks that have commented. You know, I appreciate folks that have lurked and did that. Yeah, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. It's a dangerous world out there, Tina. You know, but you got to be safe out there. Just try to look both ways when you're crossing the street. You know, keep aware. You know, take care of your family. You know, teach them. You know, don't hide from the world. And the reason I talk about something like this, you know, even though this is a deep subject, is because a lot of times people hide from the world. People don't want to be informed. You know, there are people of different generations. You know, I know Lonely Purple, your generation, yeah, y'all were informed. You know, too many times people are on the smartphones and they're going back and forth and they're texting and you know they're getting into the latest celebrity gossip, but they're not finding out what's going on in the world. They're not paying attention to things that's going on around us, the stuff that really matters. Keeping up with the Kardashians is not being informed. You know, it just you know, it's just being entertained. You know, I mean, you know, staying up with the latest celebrity gossip or drama is just not being informed. It's just being entertained. You know, so don't just be entertained, but be informed. Find out what's going on in the world around you. You know, not just your small town, not just your city or whatever, your state or your country. Look out into the world and see what's happening. It'll give you a fairer view or even more of a perspective on life. You know, and I guess that's my 2 cents about this. But this, as for this is not over. It's a it's a very tense situation with a whole bunch of shades of gray. You know, so as always, thank you for watching. Spread love. It's the Brooklyn way. And for dramatic effect, I'll turn the light off for you. Thank you for watching. Yeah, world is too big. Love you too. Yeah, it's a crazy world we live in. Crazy world. What the world needs now is a little bit of love.